everyone. This is the last lecture of our unit on antibody identification. And so what we're going to do with this PowerPoint is apply the information that we learned in our previous two lectures. So this is where you get to fine-tune your skills in determining the antibody that a person has or antibodies. So what I'm going to be doing throughout this PowerPoint is going through some panel examples with you. You can certainly download the PowerPoint and do these on your own. And for some of the examples, I'll show you a little bit later. I may not do all of them with you, and some of them are meant to be practice. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So for now, this is figure 6-3, and basically, I got this from a different textbook, and it's here we see an antigram and we see test results that were performed on a patient. And so we're going to go through and practice our skills, our steps of determining the antibody that's here, identifying it. Okay, so I'm going to get my pen going here. All right. So over here we see the results, and we see that, you know, our panel had 10 cells, and this 11, which you don't see here, was the auto control that they tested. And so before we even go any further, we see that the patient is not reacting with their own cells, which indicates this is not an autoantibody, and patient did not have a recent transfusion reaction or any kind of sensitization in vivo at this point. So when we look at the pattern of reactivity with this antibody, okay, we see that no reactions at immediate spin. At 37 degrees, we see a couple of weak reactions pop up. And by the time we move to our final phase of AHG, we can see that the reactions are getting stronger. And this is very typical, okay? That reactions would get stronger from 37 to AHG, because remember, AHG is basically enhancing reactions. Okay, so it's very typical if a reaction starts at 37 to see it get stronger in the AHG phase. So some check cells were done on negative reacting cells, and so the test process itself looks fine. So what we are going to do is begin our rule out method. So remember, for the rule out method, what kind of cell are we going to use? Well, we're not going to use cells 1 or cell 2 because they have positive reactions. So remember, our first rule is we're going to look for the first panel cell where we see negative reactions at all phases of testing. Remember, check cells don't count because they basically confirm our negatives, and this looks like a mistake here. They wouldn't have done check cells on that one. So we can start with cell number 3, and we're going to eliminate antigens positive, okay, on that cell, because since patient didn't react with that cell, it means that positive antigens on that cell are not reacting. So let's go. So we're going to look at cell 3, so I can do D. I can't do big C, it's not there. Can I do big E? Absolutely, and it's good that little e isn't there if we're considering dosage. And I can do little c because big C isn't there, and can't do anything with the next few, but when we get to little k, I can eliminate that one. Duffy A, JKB. XGA is one that's by itself, it's a sex linked. We can get rid of that one. Can get rid of LEB, get rid of LEB, and little s, big N, and we can get rid of P1. And so when you see the superscript here with the P1 that has an S, it just means that this reaction was very strong. So we can get rid of that one, or the antigen expression is very strong. Okay, so we've done all we can with cell 3. Next cell we can use, it looks like, is cell 4, because once again, negative reactions at all 3 phases of testing. The only positive reaction we see is with the check cells, and that's what we would expect to confirm our negative AHG result. So remember, we don't have to go and re-eliminate ones that we have already gotten rid of. So still can't do anything with C, Can we get rid of little e? Yes, we can. Big E isn't there, so can get rid of that one. Remember, F is that compound antigen. Can get rid of that. Nothing with big K. Nothing with Duffy B. JKA. If we're considering dosage, we would want to skip this one. LEA, no. Big S, no. Big M, no, because big N is there, so, you know, weakened expression of M antigen on this cell, so we'll skip it for now. Can we use cell 5 to rule out? No. So remember, when there are positive reactions at any phase of testing, it means that some antigen on the panel cell is reacting with the patient. So no, we're not going to use that cell to help eliminate. So we're going to move to cell 6. Still nothing with C. Jump to big K. No. We can get rid of Duffy B on this one. I'm still going to skip JKA if we're considering dosage. No to LEA, no to big S. We can get rid of M. And that's it. So we're going to move on down to 7 because we have all negative reactions there as well. So let's go over. Nothing with C. Jump to big K. Now, here's the thing with big K. When we learned about the KEL antigens, we learned that the first one is low frequency and the second one is high frequency. So what the heck do I mean? Most people do not have big K but have little k. And so the KEL antigens, when we're trying to eliminate big K, we don't have to necessarily look for a cell that doesn't have little k because it's going to be very hard to find. So usually we don't apply those dosage rules that we do with excuse me, other antigen systems when we're talking about the big K. So we're going to eliminate that one even though it's heterozygous because our textbook says we can. All right. So we're going to get rid of the big K. We can't do anything with JKA, nor LEA, nor big S. All right. So we'll move on to cell 8. No. Keep going till I come to my next one. We can get rid of JKA, which is kid. No. Nothing with LEA. Big S, we're going to skip because of dosage, because we know that the MNSS system does, dosage does affect these antigens, so we'll skip that one. And looks like we have 2 more cells, so we'll look at cell 9. Still nothing with big C. We will jump over to, we can get rid of LEA. And we can get rid of big S because it's homozygous on this cell. And, wow, look at that. There's really nothing else to get rid of. You can tell that some teacher made this one up because it's really easy. So, by the time we get to cell 10, there's really nothing left to eliminate. And the only one that's truly left is C. So let me try very carefully. I think I'll get better at doing this. I don't know, it's very tricky. This is one of my better ones. I don't know why that big one showed up there. All right, so we've eliminated everything we can, and so we really only have one specificity left, C. And so what we want to do is look at our patterns of reactivity and see if they match when the antigen is present on the cells and when it's not. So when we look at cell 1, C antigen is present and we see that patient reacted. We look at cell 2, C antigen is present and patient reacted. The next 2 lacked C antigen and patient did not react with those cells. And we see 5, C antigen is present and patient did react. And then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells are negative for C antigen and patient did not react. So that is what we call a perfect pattern match. I'll just bold these. Okay, maybe I will highlight them. I'm a glutton for punishment, right? I'll just I think I picked the wrong thing. I don't want the pen, I want the highlighter. Okay, so we'll just so you can see how it matches. Hopefully this is really clear. And sometimes students, if you decide to print some of these out and do it by hand, sometimes I didn't mean to get over there. It's hard to color in this, but we could see how it's a perfect pattern match. And we're going to call this anti-C. Let's see how well I write today. It's nothing like my real handwriting. Anti-big C. Okay, so let's apply the rule of three. Remember, rule of three is very important so that we know this is not a random event and that there is a very good likelihood that it's C. So, or antibody against big C. So remember, rule of three says we need to have at least 3 antigen positive cells that reacted with my patient, which we do. We just make it. We have 3. And we have to have at least 3 antigen negative cells that did not react with my patient. We have way more than 3. So check, rule of 3 is met. So we can say with pretty much certainty that this is anti-big C. So what is something else we can do with our patient that we talked about in our last unit? If we wanted to do something else, we could take this patient's, not their plasma this time, take their red cells, make a 3 to 5% suspension, and test this patient's red cells, phenotype them to see if they have big C antigen. And they should not. They should be negative. So there are anti-sera in the lab, antibody against big C, 1 drop of that in a tube with 1 drop of my patient's 3 to 5% reaction. We expect them to lack big C because they have antibody against big C, and it's not auto because we see that this is all negative. Okay, so remember, we can always phenotype to confirm. All right, we're going to go on to our next one, and so this is basically the interpretation, okay, which we did already. Okay, so we will move on. So the next couple panels, this is 6-6A, and this is not from our textbook either. Okay, this is from another source. And basically, this is using the same example, but what they went ahead and did, I'll try to draw a line here. I'm not doing real well. No, it's not bad. We have the initial results, okay, that we used to, and I think they're missing a 1+ here, that we used for our initial elimination to show that we had anti-C. And there would not be any reason to do an enzyme panel on this patient because it's very clear it's anti-C. But this is a textbook panel, and what they did was they showed, let's pretend they repeated the panel this time using enzyme treated cells, and so let's see what happened. Okay, so our initial results was cell 1, we had 1+ and 2+, and now with the repeat testing with the red cells that were treated with Fison or papain, we now see what happened. The 1+ went to a 3+, this 2+ went to a 4+. This is supposed to be 1+ here too, it's a typo. Okay, 1+ went to 3+, 2+, 4+. So our three reacting cells, when the cells were treated with enzymes, we see that we're getting strengthened reactions with enzyme treated cells. And so what's important to note is this example is showing us that the patient's antibody was enhanced with enzyme treatment. It got stronger. Okay, so what do we know about anti-big C? Which blood group system is it a part of? Remember, RH system. And we know typically that the RH system antigens are enhanced with enzyme treatment, along with KID and Lewis. Okay, so it absolutely makes sense that these reactions got stronger. Okay, so this next panel is a different example. And it also shows some test results. Oh, very crooked, sorry guys. It shows some initial results and then results after enzyme treatment. Okay, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through and do this panel together, and then we'll evaluate everything. Okay, so we're going to do our rule out, we're going to go for the first results. Okay, and remember the same rules apply. So here, this antibody is only reacting at AHG phase, so we see 3 positives there. We can't use them to rule out. And we see, trying to get better with the drawing here, 2 here. Okay, so the first cell that we could use to eliminate positive antigens is this one, and that's cell 4. So I'm going to go through, eliminate, and hopefully it makes sense to you. I'm looking to, to make sure that these are homozygous expression when I'm eliminating them. F is by itself, so we just get rid of that. Okay. All right, these 2 kids I'm going to skip. XGA is by itself. Little s I can get rid of. Big S isn't there. I'm going to skip M and N, and P1 is very strong antigen here. We're going to get rid of that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the very next cell that also had negative reactions at 3 phases of testing. I really am going to skip the big C only because the little c is there. Okay, so it's not homozygous, so I'm going to skip it. Can't do anything with big E or big K. Okay, can get rid of Duffy B. Still going to skip the kids. And I can get rid of on this cell. And isn't there? Okay. Go to our next one. With big C, can I get rid of big E? No, because little e is there if I'm considering dosage. Okay, nothing there, nothing here. They're both there, nothing here. All right, so yeah, I am. Start to go a little colorblind, or like the lines start to blur, I guess is the way to put it. Nothing to eliminate on that cell, so we'll go to the next one. No. We can get rid of big K. Okay, so remember, we don't apply the rule of dosage with big K because it's a low frequency antigen. All right, we can get rid of JKB. Go to LBA. Go to N. Okay. We have one more cell, number 10, and then that's it. So, no. I'm not getting rid of anything. No, get rid of this one. Can we at least get rid of big N? Yes. Okay, so that's what we're left with. We see that we don't expect this to be auto or recent transfusion reaction because patient tested with patient is negative down here. But we have quite a few specificities left. So let's take a look. Let's do our pattern match. So first we'll look at big C. Okay, positive here, positive there, positive here, positive there. Here's a mismatch. Okay, no big C, but patient's reacting. Okay, here the C antigen is present, patient's not reacting. Okay, so, and then there are additional reactions down here that C antigen isn't there. So we can say based on pattern matching, it doesn't look like big C. Let's move on to big E. Negative, negative, positive, positive, that doesn't fit. Positive here with a positive, that one fits. Then we see positive, patient's not reacting. The pattern for big E doesn't fit either. So let's move on to our Duffy A. So we have 3 positives in a row, antigens are present, and patient reacted with each one of those cells. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 antigen negative cells, and patient did not react with those. Then we have 2 antigen positive cells, which the patient did react with, and lastly an antigen negative cell that our patient did not react with. So that is a perfect pattern match. So I'm going to block that one off, but we'll still keep looking. My luck has run out with the straight line. Okay, we'll block this one off, but Yeah, that's the best I can do. We're still going to look at our last one, JKA. Positive, 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 but then negative, patient's reacting. Then we have 1, 2, 3 antigen positive cells that patient didn't react with. This fits down here. It's really not a complete match, but some of the patterns are matching, and so it's not a perfect match. And so what do we know about kid like JKA? This would be enhanced by enzyme treatment. So, you know, if it's truly there, if we repeat with enzyme treatment, maybe some reactions would be enhanced, just as a double check. And what do we know about Duffy with enzymes? Anybody? I hope you're yelling it at home. Destroyed. Okay, so maybe doing an enzyme panel would just help. Sorry, that's the best I can do. Oh, gee, that's bad. Okay. Okay, so enhanced versus destroyed. So let's see what happens when they repeated the very same panel using the enzyme treated cells. Whoa. Okay, so cells 1, 2, and 3 initially reacted in the AHG phase. When we look over here at the enzyme treatment to the AHG, actually to everything, we see negative results all throughout. We lost our reactions. So what do you think? Which one is that confirming? Not the kid. Okay, the kid would be enhanced and maybe stronger, even though the pattern didn't completely match. So the fact that enzyme treatment eliminated reactions is telling us this patient has anti-Duffy. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we have one more to do. This is John Doe. And I'm going to do this one with you, and then there are some additional panels here that you could do for practice if you feel like you need it, which I would suggest. And if you wanted to do these for practice, you could do that in a couple of ways. You could either, let me just show you. Okay, I'm going to discard my annotation. So, you know, when you open up the PowerPoint in Canvas, see, and there's all my notes, but I don't want you to see those notes. So anyway, you would need to get into slideshow just like I do. So click on slideshow from your current slide. And if you wanted to do it just on your screen, you can do what I do. And down here, there are some buttons, and one is a pen. And when you click on the pen, I don't know if you guys see that, it allows me to draw on the panel. Okay, so you could do that as well. If you prefer, you can print out just the frame that goes along with the panel you want to do, and then I do have the results in the notes section, which I'll show you guys again in a minute, okay? If you want to practice. If you have a printer, great. If not, you can do it like I do. So this is one that I made up. One thing I want to show you guys is sometimes in the lab, a tech may want to run something called an RH negative select panel. And so why would they want to do that? They may want to do that if they have an RH negative patient, okay, for instance. And so what that would mean is I would look here at my cells and select only the ones that are negative for D. And so if you remember, all of these little R's, basically cells 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all Rh negative. We can tell by the little R's, and we can see that they lack D antigen. And then anything with capital R, of course, is D positive, and including 11. So if anyone ever says to you, oh, I want to run an Rh negative select panel, get me some cells, you'd have to look at the antigram and find the ones that, you know, are little r, something that lack the D antigen. Okay, so We have 3 phases of testing, and you see I wrote my results directly on the antigram. Remember, I can only use a cell to rule out if all 3 phases are negative. So can I use cell 1? Yes, the only thing that's positive here are the check cells, okay? And we grade our check cells in our lab, okay? So, but I can use this, okay? So I'm going to go over here, just like we did. It's going to be a little challenging because these are smaller. I can get rid of big D. I can get rid of big C. I don't know why that line went there. Maybe when I hold my mouse down too long. I can get rid of little e. Nothing with F. CW, yes. Okay, little k. You'll get fast at this the more you do. It's kind of fun. If you like solving puzzles, you may enjoy it. Okay, if you don't, you might not. This is kind of easy. I'm just going through. XGA is by itself. Okay. Of course, we don't consider really dosage with LEA and LEB. It shouldn't really come up because remember when we learned it would be highly unusual to have both. I'm going to skip big S and little s because they're heterozygous as well as M and N. Here the P1 is weak, so maybe I want to wait for another cell for that one, and LUB. All right. Can I use cell 2? No, there are positive reactions. Can I use cell 3? Absolutely. So let's go over there. I can get rid of big E. I can get rid of little c. Nothing with F. Nothing with V or K. KPA, JSA, no. Duffy, A, no. JK, A, I'm going to skip because it's heterozygous. No to LEA. Nothing with the S's or the M and N. And I'm going to skip P1 again because it's a weak. Okay. So we're going to move on to cell 4. Remember, if I've already eliminated, I don't need to worry. So I can get rid of F on this cell. I can get rid of Vel. Okay. Nope. 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 Due to dosage. Yes. I'm going crazy. I'm going cross-eyed. No to the S's and the M and N's. This time I'm going to get rid of the P1 because it's a strong expression. So we could say then that's a good one to use to eliminate. And we're going to move on to cell 5. So I don't even need to look at my RHs. We've already gotten rid of everything there. No to K or KPA or JSA. Remember, they're low frequency antigens. Duffy A, no. JKA, no. No to S's. Yes to big N. Right. Can't use cell 6. We're going to move on to 7. Okay. Oh, we can get rid of big K. So remember, big K is one that we don't worry about dosage with because it's a low frequency antigen. So we can get rid of the big K. No to KPA or JSA. No to Duffy A. JKA. Yes. Yes, final one. Okay. See. Nothing with the S's. No to big M. Okay, no to LUA. Okay. Move on to, I have to adjust my screen so I can see what I'm doing. It's getting near the bottom. Okay, so we've eliminated everything we can up to here. No to KPA, no to JSA. Duffy A can't do a thing. We can get rid of big S on this one. Can get rid of big M. Oops. Nothing to LUA. Okay, and then we have one last cell, cell 11. So we've eliminated everything up to KPA, so we're going to start there. Nope. 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 Going. No, we can't get rid of little s. Bummer. Okay, and no to LUA. So we're left with a couple of specificities. So let's take a peek at what happens to be going on. Okay, so we're going to do our pattern matching now. So remember, we want to go to the first antigen that we were not able to eliminate, and that is KPA. So I'm going to get a different color pen. Okay, so let's look at KPA. When we look at KPA, what do you see what I see? Wow. So no wonder we can't eliminate KPA. It's not represented on any of the panel cells. So we have to say can't rule out. I'm trying to abbreviate here. KPA. We can't say anything about it. We know it's a low frequency antigen. It's not represented on these panel cells, so there's no pattern to match. We can't say anything about it. When we move on to JSA, we see the same thing. It's another low frequency antigen of the KEL system, and so we can't rule that one out either. Comma. Okay. So let's move on to Duffy A, and let's see what's going on here. Negative with a negative, positive, positive, 3 negatives. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Get down here. Positive with a positive, negative with a negative, and then 2 positives, and 2 negatives. So I don't know what you think, but I think that's a pattern match. So this is going to be really tricky because this is a very narrow column. Oh, I'm not doing a good job here. This is a perfect pattern match, okay? But we're still going to look at little s. And right off the bat, we see positive here with a negative. Nope. Negative here with a positive. Nope. Positive. No, it doesn't match. So this is looking like anti-Duffy A. Let me just do with one with anti-Duffy A, or was it Duffy B? I don't remember. But that's what this one is looking like. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So let me get out of PowerPoint, or just the presentation mode, and show you guys. So when you're doing these at home, you know, if you get out of the presentation screen and back to just the individual slides, you can see here that I have some notes. And so using the rule out method, pattern matches Duffy A. I forgot to ask you guys this. Was the rule of 3 met? Yes. Let's go back. Yes, because we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 positive reactions that reacted with 4 positive cells, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negative reactions where the antigen was negative. So rule of 3 was met, not a random event, and you should always check that. And we see that the patient did not agglutinate themselves there. Okay, so anyway, as you're doing some of these practice ones, when you go down here, you'll see my notes. Okay, KPA and JSA can't be ruled out because those antigens aren't represented on the panel cells. Little s pattern does not match, and we eliminated the K, so we didn't take that into consideration due to the fact that K is low frequency. All right, I'm going to get back to slideshow. We're going to do a couple more, and then you guys are going to practice. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so if, and this example was here because I think when I used this panel last year, I applied dosage to everything, and so we did not eliminate the big K because it was heterozygous. So let's just do an example. Let's say we did not eliminate the big K from here, okay? And we see that some of the big K reactions kind of match, okay? Well, maybe one of them does. Let's say we just wanted to make sure if we didn't eliminate it, okay, if we took dosage into consideration and we didn't eliminate it, to really prove that the person didn't have an anti-K in addition to their anti-Duffy A, we would need to test a cell or two from another panel that has K antigen, but not the Duffy A, okay? And so by looking for Duffy A negative K antigen positive cells, we're going to see if the patient, you know, reacts or not. Okay, so let's just look. And we did this example before. So here we can see cell 1 has K and doesn't have Duffy A. That would be a good one. if we wanted to do this testing. Okay. So, oops, cell 1 could be used. Cell 2 doesn't have big K, so that's not going to help. Cell 3 has big K with no Duffy A. We could use cell 3. And we're looking for K positive. So let's see, cell 7. Now cell 7 we really can't use because it has K antigen, but it also has Duffy A. So remember, if we're trying to prove the patient, see whether they have an anti-K, we don't want to have their anti-Duffy A reacting with the cell because that's not going to help us. So that's why we would want to find K positive and Duffy A negative. So it looks like we could use either cells 1 or 3. So we're eliminating reactions from their anti-Duffy A. When we test them with just the K positive cells, chances are in this case, they're not going to react, but it would just be an additional step we could do if we wanted to. All right. This is a crazy, crazy panel. So yes, so far we've used panels that have maybe 10 or 11 reagent red cells, but there are extensive panels out there. This one has up to 20 different vials. And I just used this one just for fun for you guys, okay? So a couple things about this one. I am not going to do this one with you. I would like you to practice with this one to make sure you know what you're doing, okay? But just a few things before we move on. When we were talking before about selecting an Rh negative select panel, we could see with this panel that cells 11 through 19 are all Rh negative. They're all little r's. They would be good. And the other thing I'd like to say is when we look at the pattern of reactivity with this patient, Jane Doe, what do we notice? There are only reactions at immediate spin, and by the time we get to 37 and AHG, those reactions are gone. So this is not a clinically significant antibody. And remember, which class of antibody reacts best at room temperature immediate spin? Hopefully you know, IgM. It would not impact transfusion, but I just set this example up for you guys so you get some practice ruling out, okay? And as I said, you can do this one of two ways. You can either just print out this one slide, okay, and do it with a pen or pencil or highlighter or however, or if you go into slideshow presentation mode for this slide, it's going to let you in the lower left corner pick a pen and you can do it like I do with the pen, okay? And then when you want to see how you did, you get out of presentation mode, end your show, and you're going to see what the answer is, okay? And I'm going to quickly move ahead because I don't want you guys to see it. The next one, Betty Blood Bank, okay, is one you could also practice with, and I gave you a lot to practice with. So this one is different, okay? Here we see reactions at 37 degrees and AHG, and they're getting stronger. One thing I want to point out to you guys, and when you go through this, you're going to see this yourself, but let's look at cell 1. Okay, so cell 1, patient reacted plus weak, and then reaction bumped up to 1+ with AHG. But when we look at cell 2, we see that this one reacted stronger at 37, 1+, and bumped up to 2+. So what could be explaining why some of these cells are 1+ going to 2+ and others are plus weak going to 1+? This is something that typically happens due to dosage. So if this patient's antibody is reacting with a homozygous cell for the antigen that corresponds to the antibody, we're seeing the stronger reactions versus weaker ones with heterozygous cells. So when you go through, you're going to see that. So I'm not going to do this one with you either. This is another one you can do for practice, and just like the last one, when you are done, you're going to see, if you use the arrow, you could see all the notes, okay? All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to a trickier example, and this is an example of multiple antibodies. So before we get started, let me get my pen. I just want to separate the testing. I'll be looking at them separately. Oh, please let me be straight. Okay. There's a couple of different things going on here to talk about. This is for learning purposes, obviously. Okay. So when we look at our results, we're going to start with our initial results. So once again, we have immediate spin, 37 degrees using LynnC as a potentiator, AHG in check cells. And so we look at cell 1. And interesting, right? What do we have here with cell 1? So we have the strongest reaction at immediate spin. It drops off to 2+ at 37, and then at AHG it's 1+. Okay? So let's go to cell 2. Can we use cell 2 to help eliminate? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and use it. So we're going to get rid of big D, big C, no little c, no big E. We can get rid of little e. Nothing with FB. We can get rid of that CW, that low frequency antigen. Okay. We're going to get rid of KPA only because it's a low frequency antigen and Kel doesn't usually show dosage, so we're going to do that. We'll skip the KPB. Let's see. JSB, FEA, JKB, FEA, P1, M. No, nothing with the S's. LUB and XGA. Okay. When we look to cell 3, we cannot use this cell. However, I want you guys to notice, look at the different pattern of reactivity here. So cell 3 is positive only in the AHG phase. And so while we're going through, I'm going to change my pen colors to designate these different reactions. And this is going to help us later. Okay, so we see only AHG. So this pattern of reactivity, I hope you would agree, is different than what we saw with cell 1. Can we use cell 4? Yes. So let's go through and see what we can eliminate. Little c. Nothing here. F stands alone, that compound antigen. V is by itself too. Okay, no big K. We can get rid of KPB on this one, homozygous. JSA, remember, this is also a low frequency antigen of the Kel system, and it would be it's very difficult to even find it represented on a cell. So remember, when we have these low frequency Kel antigens, I'm going to say go ahead and eliminate them when they're there because you're never going to find it homozygous. Okay, we can get rid of JKA. LEB. Nothing for N. We can get rid of big S. Okay, and that looks like about it. Okay. So can we use cell 5? No, we cannot. And let's look at the pattern of reactivity with cell 5. So I'm going to outline it in red. It's more similar to what we saw with cell 1. So reactions start at room temperature, continue through at 37 weaker, and then continue through to AHG. So this is really similar to the reactions we got with cell 1. So I'm going to outline that in red. Okay, so when we look at cell 6, excuse me, we can see we cannot use cell 6, okay? And when we look at the pattern of reactivity of cell 6, we see negative at room temperature, negative at 37, but we're seeing a 1+ reactivity with AHG. So this is matching the pattern of reactivity that we see with cell 3. So I'm going to change my pen to the other color and highlight it green. Right. Can we use cell 7 or cell 8 for that matter? And the answer is no. And once again, the patterns of reactivity for both of these cells fits along the line of cell 5, where we see reactions strongest at immediate spin. They fall down a little bit, but still continue through 37, and they're still here at AHG. So both of these actually match, our red pattern. I don't like what I did there. Let me get my eraser. I don't like what I did. Let me try to do this better. No, it's not, but okay. All right, so we have a couple more cells left. We have cells 9 and 10. Let's see, can we use 9? Yes, we can use 9. So let's go over here. So we can't do anything with big E, nothing with big K. Duffy B, no, if we're considering dosage. N, no. We got little s, no. LUA, no. Okay, so that cell basically did nothing for us. And when we look at cell 10, we cannot use this cell to eliminate anything because we see that there's a 1+ reaction showing up at AHG, and this looks similar to the pattern of reactivity with cells 6 and 3. So I'm just going to go and outline this in green. Okay, and lastly, we have our patient control. Okay, and so patient, it's not an autoantibody nor a transfusion reaction to recently transfused cells. So this is what we have. So how do we move on? How do we move forward in light of all of this? Okay, so we have a couple things left. So let's look at first big E. Okay, big E. The first two cells are negative for the antigen. Patient reacted here, but not here. So one of them fits and one of them doesn't, but let's just keep looking, okay? Positive was cell 3. Okay, that fits. Then we have two negatives. Well, one negative fits, but the other one doesn't. It doesn't look like it's going to be a perfect match, but I hope everyone can see, based on the patterns of reactions that we have here, it looks like we have more than one antibody. Okay, so we have an antibody that is reacting at immediate spin most strong and then dropping off. And then we have a second antibody that's only reacting at AHG. So let me just go through and just circle the positive E antigens and see if we find anything with the pattern of these positives reacting. Okay, so let's look at cell 3. Okay, E antigen is there. Oh, patient reacted 2+. Cell 6, E antigen positive. Oh, patient reacted. And cell 10, E antigen is there and patient reacted. Okay, so this pattern of reactivity looks like it's fitting my green outline over here. Maybe I should get my eraser and put them in green now that we know that. Okay. So hopefully everybody sees this. So let's look. E there. Cell 6 and cell 10. Okay, so right now it looks like the E antigen could fit possibly one of the antibodies. So let's look, before we move on, let's look a little bit at strength of the reactions that we have for just the antibody that's reacting at AHG, this one in green. So we see that this antibody is reacting more strongly with cell 3 than it is with either cells 6 or 10. When you see something like that, you want to think, well, could dosage be coming into play? It's entirely possible, okay, that cell 3 is reacting stronger because of dosage. So let's take a look at our E antigen with regard to the little e. So when we look at cell 3, we see that big E is homozygous in this case. There's no little e. So it's like having a double shot of E antigen there, okay? When we look at cell 6, we see big E is there, but also little e. That's heterozygous. And when we look at cell 10, that is also heterozygous for the big E. So this could really explain why cell 3 is reacting more strongly than cells 6 and 10 dosage. Okay, so we have a double shot of E on cell 3 and weaker antigen expression on both cell 6 and 10. So that makes perfect sense with what we have so far. So I'm going to do a circle on the big E because I really feel that that's one of them. Okay? So we're going to move on, and we need to look at the other specificities that we were not able to eliminate. So the next one we have is big K. All right, so big K is here. There was reaction there. Negative there. Negative, well, some of them fit and some of them don't, but like I don't really think we can say that big K isn't there, even though it doesn't perfectly match a pattern. So I'm going to put a little arrow to that one. Okay, I think we need to do more work to rule out big K. Okay, not convincing to rule it in, meaning we know it's definitely there, or rule it out at this point. Because some of the reactions fit and some don't, and it's really hard to tell. So what do we have left? Duffy B. Let's see. Positive here, positive there. Negative, negative. Positive, positive. Negative, negative. Positive, positive. Negative, negative. This one looks like it could, even though the pattern isn't perfect, that it's kind of like the big K. We can't say for sure what's going on with it. So we need to do more work before we can say anything about either one of those, because some of the positive reactions fit when the antigen is there and some of the negative ones do too. It's not a complete like, oh, they completely don't match. So we can't rule that one out either. Okay, and then we move on to big N. All right. So positive, positive, negative, negative, negative. Okay, remember we have two antibodies. Negative, positive with a positive, negative with a negative, positive with a positive, 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 negative, and then not reacting with that one. So guess what, guys? Let me, when I look at this big N, let me outline positive ones in red to match here. That's a match. That's a match. That's a match. And the next one's a match. And then we have negative. So it looks like the N antigen could be possibly, or anti-N could be the antibody that's reacting in the pattern of most strong at room temperature and falling off, because you can see how these match. Okay, so we have one more specificity left to look at, and that's little s. So let's see, positive, but then there's a positive here and a negative. Positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, positive, but positive, 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 positive. Doesn't completely match. namely because of this one, where we have an antigen positive cell and there's no reaction. So that one is a little bit less worrisome, shall we say. Okay? And then lastly, we do have one more left, LUA. And so what can we say about LUA? It's a low frequency antigen and it is not represented on this panel. So LUA can't be excluded. That's what we say. It can't be excluded because it's not represented on the panel. Okay? Okay. So what we are left with at this point is we think patient may have an anti-E that's reacting at AHG only. And it looks like they also have, let me get back to red, most likely an N that is reacting most strongly at immediate spin, and strength of reaction then drops off. But we still have big K and Duffy B that we're really not sure about. Okay, so we need to do some more work to figure out what's going on. So what they went ahead and did next was repeat the panel using enzyme treated cells. And so we see the results of the enzyme treatment in this middle column here. And the first thing that we should notice is that the reactions with cell 1, 5, 7, and 8 are now eliminated. Okay, they are eliminated. We see that they are no longer there. So the reactions that are still showing up, I'm going to block them out in green, are these three. Okay? So firstly, what can we say about antigens that correspond to the results at immediate spin here in blocked off in red? They were eliminated by enzyme treatment. So what do you think? Do you think these enzymes were enhanced when we did the enzyme panel, or were they destroyed? Shouldn't be a hard question, okay? So since cells 1, 5, 7, and 8 reactions were eliminated when we repeated the testing with enzyme treated cells, we can say that these are antigens that are destroyed. This antigen was destroyed by enzymes, okay? This was the pattern of reactivity that we were thinking went along with our N, okay? And what do we know about M and N? Would it make sense that the reactions would be eliminated in this case, meaning that N would be destroyed by enzymes? Yes, okay? So we know that N is destroyed by enzymes. So the enzyme panel sort of proves, doesn't sort of, proves that basically this is due to our anti-N, okay? So N was destroyed with enzyme treatment. So let's look at what we have following the enzyme treatment. So we see that cells 3, 6, and 10 still reacted. And what do we see about the reactions? They went from 2+ on the normal panel here to 3+. They went from 1+ here to 2+. And with cell 10, same thing, 1+ to 2+. So the reactions actually got stronger for this one using the enzyme treated cells. And so this is telling us that this is an example of an antigen that would be enhanced with enzymes, okay? What do we know about E? What do we know about Rh system antigens? They are, can I do it? Enhanced, okay? So does it make sense? Absolutely, okay? So it looks like these reactions are due to our anti-E. The ones that fell away were due to anti-N. Now, we still have a couple things that we really couldn't say anything about. So let's look a little bit more carefully at them. So firstly, the KEL system. Do you guys remember? What do we know about KEL system antigens? When we treat the cells with the enzymes, how are KEL antigens affected? No effect. Okay, so basically what this is telling us is KEL is neither enhanced nor destroyed. So if this patient really did have an anti-K, like we see they have K antigen here, we should see it reacting over here with enzyme treatment, and we don't. Okay, so in effect, that can help us eliminate the big K, okay, because big K is here. When we did the enzyme panel, if the patient truly had an anti-K, we should have seen reactivity here then, because KEL is not affected by enzymes, okay? Let's look at some other ones. Now this one, okay, also on cell 7, we see that the KEL antigen is there, and with enzyme treatment, nothing, okay, because it was eliminated. That doesn't make sense for KEL. So basically, we can rule out big K after the enzyme treatment. It should have still showed up here if this patient had an anti-K, all right? So that leaves us with Duffy B. Okay, what do we know about the Duffy antigens with enzyme treatment? Anybody? They are destroyed, okay? So similar to M and N, they would be destroyed by the use of enzymes. So we can't rely on this enzyme treatment to help us out in this case to determine whether Duffy B is there or not, because it would have been eliminated along with N, okay, because it's one of those systems that the antigens are destroyed by enzymes. There are a few more things we need to do before we can say for sure which antibodies this patient has. We know they have an anti-E, we know they have an anti-N based on our enzyme panel. However, we still have an issue with finding out if they have an antibody against Duffy B. And so we're going to deal with that in a minute. But before we move away from this panel, I just want to show you guys one additional test that was set up in this very last column. So if you look at the very end here, after they did the enzyme panel, they decided to do a pre-warming technique and test the patient at AHG only. So what this means is they took this patient's plasma, they pre-warmed it at 37 degrees, and they took each one of these panel cells and pre-warmed them separately at 37 degrees as well. And once everything was warmed up to human body temperature, they added 2 drops of the patient's plasma and 1 drop of each one of the panel cells into the tubes, and they repeated the test with everything warm. The reason why they did that is they wanted to see, specifically with the anti-N, if it's reacting at 37 degrees, because the initial testing showed us, although the reactivity was most strong at room temperature, it dropped off at 37 and even less at AHG. If we truly have reactions with this anti-N at 37, we would need to consider it clinically significant for transfusion purposes. So that is why they did the pre-warm technique. And so we can see here with the pre-warm technique that the reactions, the red reactions due to the anti-N are now eliminated, okay? And really the only ones that are showing up are the reactions that are due to the anti-E, okay? So we can see pre-warming basically eliminated, okay, the reactions from the anti-N. Okay, so what does this mean as far as transfusion for this patient? To this point, we don't need to consider their anti-N as being affected with transfused red cells, okay? So we talked about this previously in, I think, lecture 10 and 11. So when we determine that a patient really has antibodies we need to provide them with antigen-negative donor red cells for transfusion. And so when we transfuse this patient, we absolutely need to give them E-negative RBCs. Because if we give them donor red cells that have the E antigen on them, this anti-E is going to attack those donor red cells, and there will be a transfusion reaction, and the donor red cells will be destroyed. By doing the pre-warming technique, we've proved that the patient's anti-N really does not react at 37 degrees. This was just carryover here. And so we do not need to worry about providing them with N antigen negative donor cells. Okay, it's not going to have an effect in vivo. Okay, so for now, they need to have E negative RBCs for transfusion. Okay, so let's move on to our next slide and talk about what we're going to do about Duffy B, because we haven't completely ruled it out yet. So let's move to the next one. Okay, so in order to prove that this patient does or doesn't have a third antibody against Duffy B, we need to do a select cell panel. We need to select a few cells, and what we're looking for here are cells that are negative for E antigen and negative for N antigen, because that is going to eliminate the anti-E and N from reacting. Okay, we want to eliminate those antibodies because we really want to see if they have this third antibody against Duffy B. Okay, so let's look. We need E negative. Well, this is E negative, but we also need N negative. Where's N? Oh, can that work? No, because big N is there, so we can't use cell 1. Cell 2 is E negative and N negative. So that's good, but what we need to make sure is that Duffy B antigen is there. So let's see if our third thing is going to fit. Yes. Okay. So we have Duffy B. We have no N, so we're eliminating the anti-N reacting. And we have no E antigen, so we're eliminating the anti-E. So this is going to fit. This cell can be used, cell 2. Okay, let's see if we have any others we can use. Can't use cell 3, it has E antigen. Let's look at cell 4. Negative for E, negative for N, but no Duffy B. Okay, so that won't help us out. And I can see that the next 2 cells don't have Duffy B antigen either, so we won't even look at them. So let's look at this one, cell 7. Okay, we have Duffy B, there is no N, and there's no E, so it looks like we could use cell 7. So let me circle it so you see it. Negative for E, negative for N, and Duffy B is there. So we can absolutely use 7. And it looks like these last 3, 8, 9, and 10 have the Duffy B antigen, so let's see if any of those could be used. Okay, so cell 8, no N, no E. Use that one. Okay, let's look at 9. Aha, can't. So the N is there, can't use it. E isn't there, but the fact that N is there, we don't want to use it. And then the last one, E is not there, but N is, so we can't use that one either. Okay, so all right, so hopefully you see why. So just to reiterate, cells 2, 7, and 8 are negative for both E and N antigens, and by selecting them for testing, we're going to eliminate reactions with the patient's antibody against E and antibody against N. And these cells also are positive for Duffy B antigen. So by testing the patient with these cells, we're going to see if they truly have an antibody against Duffy B as well, that we weren't able to figure out on our previous panel. Okay, So let me say that this testing was done, and all 3 phases of testing, and we got negative reactions with each cell. Okay, so if that happens, it proves, nope, there's no Duffy B. They just have the anti-E and anti-N. And we could say that with confidence then because we tested for it. Okay, so that's the reason for doing it. On the other hand, if cells 2, 7, and 8 come up positive, then it looks like they have a third antibody, okay, and anti-Duffy B as well. And this Duffy B would be important for transfusion because it reacts at, AHG phase. So we would have to provide Duffy B antigen negative donor cells if that were the case. Okay. So just want to reiterate, so this was from a textbook, and what I can tell you, through all of our crazy work here, just to kind of sum it all up, we determined patient had an anti-N that reacted at room temperature most strongly. When we did our enzyme treatment, the anti-N was eliminated, okay? We determined that they also had an anti-E that was reacting mostly at AHG that was enhanced when we tested with enzymes. Okay, so we determined that those 2 antibodies were present. We did the pre-warm and repeated the original panel because we wanted to see if this anti-N was clinically significant. If it reacted here at 37, we would have to consider it for transfusion purposes. It did not. So what that leaves us with is patient has anti-E, and they should be provided with E antigen negative donor cells so they do not have a transfusion reaction. Okay, we did additional work for the Duffy B because we could not completely rule that one out, and so we did a select cell panel where we found 3 cells that were negative for both E and N antigens but positive for Duffy B. When we did that testing, we had negative reactions, and that eliminates the possibility of them having a third anti-Duffy B. Okay, so that wraps up that really tricky multiple antibody. All right, so just want to go back and talk a little bit about screening cells, because prior to doing a panel like any that we did today, an antibody screen would have been done and the patients would have reacted. Okay, so we can always go back after the fact, after we've identified antibodies, and look and see how our patient reacted with the screening cells. And so this is an angiogram of screening cells that I used a number of years ago. And so let's use the example of our last example where the patient had anti-big E and also anti-big N. So, going after the fact, considering the patient had those 2 antibodies, do you think they would have reacted with cell 1? Okay, so let's see. Well, there's no E antigen. However, there is N. So what this is telling us, we would expect to see reactions due to their anti-N when we did the antibody screen, similar to what we got in the panel with that 3+ immediate spin, 2+, 1+, okay? When we look at screening cell 2, we see the E antigen is there and the N antigen is there, so chances are we would just see both screening cells in this case positive due to both of those antibodies. And so you can actually go back and look at that and see if it makes sense to what you've identified. Okay, and here's another one. Okay, so let's look. So would patient have reacted? Remember, anti-E and anti-N, would they have reacted with screening cell 1? There's no big E, but there is N, so yeah, they would have reacted there. The anti-N would have reacted. Screening cell 2, big E, but no big N. So chances are with screening cell 2, we would have seen only those warm reactions at AHG. And we look at screening cell 3 and we see no big E and no big N. So would they have reacted with that one? No. Okay, so we can go back and look at these reactions after the fact and see if they make sense. So the last panel I made up, and this will be the last one we do, and I did this for teaching purposes only. And this is another multiple antibody panel that is tricky. Okay, so bear with it. Bear with it. And you get better at these the more you do them. And, you know, for testing purposes, I'm not going to give you multiple antibody ones on a test or as an assignment. I try to make it simple. But when you go to do your clinicals, you'll definitely see some patients with multiple antibodies. So it's good to have an idea about what can be done. Okay? And I know this panel is really kind of hard to look at because everything's small. So we see the initial phases of testing here. Testing was done at immediate spin, 37 lists, AHG, and then we have check cells. But you notice there's nothing, only the patient control is reacting with the check cells. And so when you look at this antigram to do the elimination process using the initial testing results, what do we have? We have all 11 panel cells reacting. So can I use any of these to help eliminate? No, I can't. So this is an example of someone having an antibody to a high frequency antigen. That's why we see all the panel cells are reacting. How do we know this is not an autoantibody? The patient control is negative. Okay, if this were an autoantibody, a warm reacting autoantibody, we would see the patient result positive here as well. Okay, and it's not. So this is telling us this patient has an antibody to a high frequency antigen. Okay, because all of our panel cells are reacting. Well, this is a problem. How are we going to find out what is going on with this patient? And you know, chances are they may have another ALO antibody that is being masked by this high frequency antibody. So what do we do? Okay, so there's a couple things we can do. We could do enzyme treatment like we did in the last example. However, I thought I would show you something different since we used enzymes to help us solve the last one. And so basically, what we decided to do was treat the red cells with DTT, dithiothreatol. Okay, put on those thinking caps, ha ha ha. Which antigen system is disrupted by sulfhydryl reagents such as DTT? And the answer is KEL. And what do we know about some of these KEL antigens like little k, KPB, JSB? Are you looking at this panel? Do you see how all three of these antigens are present on every single panel cell? They are high frequency. Okay, so start with these, trying to eliminate these KELs and see if that can help us out. So treated the cells with DTT and retested our patient, and lo and behold, what do we see? Not everything is positive now, and so it was only tested at AHG, okay? And so now we see we have like the first 3 cells that we could use to help us eliminate, because it looks like there's more than one antibody here. Okay, so let's use those to try to figure out what's going on with the second antibody. Okay, so we get rid of big D, get rid of big C, and I know this is really small, it's very hard to see. Little e, CW, it's very hard to write on too. Little k, okay, KPB, JSB, Duffy A, GKB, XGA, LV, little s, N, P1, and LUB. And I apologize, I know it's really small to see. Okay, so, and we're only looking at these, right? And then remember, this is not telling us what the high frequency antibody is. This is telling us what the other antibody is, because they have more than one. So we're going to go to cell 2. No to these, no to that, no. We can get rid of big K, okay, because remember that one we don't use dosage for. KPA, no. JSB is not even represented here. No, to kids because they're both there. Get rid of them. Nothing there. Okay. And we can use cell 3. And so remember, I'm looking at the second set of results here. So I can get rid of big E, little c, no to F, no to V, no to KPA, JSB we can't do anything with, no to the kids. That looks like about it. All right. So cells 4, 5, and 6 reacted, so we're not going to use those, but then it looks like I can use 7 and 8. Okay, so 7, can get rid of F. No. No. Oh, looks like we can get rid of Duffy B. No, with JKA. No. Okay, and 8. So we've gotten rid of most of the RH ones. Nothing we can do there. Can't get rid of JKA. Can get rid of LEA. Big S. No. No, okay. Can't use cell 9 because that one reacted, and it looks like we can use cell 10, and that'll be the last cell that we can use. So let's go to cell 10. All right, nothing, nothing. I'm going blind. You guys probably are too. Can get rid of JKA. Yay! No to S. And no to LUA. All right. So we're going to look at patterns of reactivity just with this set here. Okay, so what do we have left? Val is a very low incident antigen, and it's only represented on one of these cells, so we're not really going to worry about that one. We could see KPA is extremely low frequency and not represented on any of the panel cells. JSA also, it's not even tested for, okay? And that leaves us with big S. Okay, so let's look at big S. We have 1, 2, 3. First 3 cells are antigen negative. First 3 cells did not react with our patient. Okay. We have 2+. The next 3 cells, 4, 5, and 6, reacted with the patient. And we see 4, 5, and 6, the antigen is present. Okay. And so we see different strengths of reactivity here. It reacted more strongly with 4 than with 5 or 6. So let's take a look at that. When we look at cell 4, we see S antigen is there without little s, so it's homozygous expression, whereas cells 5 and 6, the little s is there too, heterozygous weaker expression of that S antigen, and that could be why we see these varying reaction strengths. Cells 7 and 8 did not react with the patient. We see that S antigen is not present in either of those cells. And then cell 9, S antigen is homozygous. We have a 2+ reaction with our patient, negative with 10, S antigen is absent. And once again, cell 11, homozygous, 2+ reaction. So guess what, folks? That is a perfect pattern match for anti-S. Okay? So what we're going to say for now is we know the patient has anti-big S. And if we wanted to prove it, remember, we could phenotype this patient, take their red cells and test it with antiserum against big S, and this patient should be lacking big S antigen. Okay? So we know what the second antibody is, but what about this first one that was eliminated with DTT treatment? So we want to think it's something of the KEL system, right? Because we know that DTT eliminates KEL antigens, and we want to think which ones of the KEL system are high frequency. And so we know little k is high frequency, it's on every cell, KPB is on every cell, and JSB is on every cell. So those are the three high frequency antigens. How are we going to tell which antibody this patient has? Anti-little k, anti-KPB, or anti-JSB? We're going to have to go through and hand pick some cells from other panels that have certain antigens lacking and certain antigens present. Okay, and so here's what was done. Okay, so went to another panel and we found in this cell no little k, only KPB is on this one. Okay, and remember, we have to make sure that S antigen isn't on any of them because we want to eliminate the reaction from their anti-S. We look at the second cell we picked. This one only has the little k, okay, and no S antigen. And then the last one we picked only has the JSB, okay? So here you see the phenotype, right? No little k, only KPB, and S is not present on any of them because we don't want this interfering to try to figure out what this one is, okay? So cell 12 only has KPB, cell 13 only has little k, and cell 14 only has JSB, and lacking the other ones. And let's see what test results we get. So whichever one reacts, it's going to tell us which antibody this high frequency antibody goes along with. So we see no reaction with cell 12. That was where we had the KPB antigen. So that rules out antibody against KPB, nothing. We look at cell 13 and we see, aha, here's where we have positive reactions. This was the cell that only had little k, all right? So this is telling us this high frequency antigen is, and I'll write it with the line, anti-little k, all right? But we can, just to make sure we cover all our bases, cell 14 only had the JSB and patient didn't react. So it basically proves, that we have the anti-little k, and that's what's masking everything here, all right? So this would be a real challenge for this patient in getting a transfusion of red cells because we know this little k antigen, most people have it. It would be very challenging to try to find donor red cells that lack them. They may have to go to that rare donor repository to try to see if they could get a unit, because what we need to give them is S negative, little k negative donor red cells. Otherwise, their anti-little k is going to react with K antigen, and their anti-big S would react with S antigen. So this is a challenge. And so I put this one together just so that you could see how we could use another tool in our toolbox, so to speak, the DTT, to eliminate KELs, to find the second antibody, and then go back, once we know that one, to figure out what high frequency antibody the patient has. Okay, I'm going to end my show. Okay, and so, if you want to read more about this, okay, you can look at this as well. When you exit slideshow, you're going to see my notes here. Okay, and this is basically everything that we talked about. Okay, all right, everybody. So that concludes all of our discussion about panels and identification of antibodies. So you do want to move on and do some practice panels. So remember, in this PowerPoint, there are two that you can do, Jane Doe and Betty Blood Bank. And so you can do them in one of two ways. You can either If you have a printer, just print out these 2 slides only and go through and do your elimination and come back here and see what the results are, okay? Or if you don't have a printer, you can do what I do. You go into slideshow, and then if you go in your lower left corner, there's a pen that shows up, and basically you can go through, you pick your pen and you pick the color, and you can go through and do it that way, okay, either way. I'm not going to be grading you on these 2 practice ones. However, I do want you to be aware that you're going to have an assignment with a panel that you will have to turn in. So it's really in your best interest to make sure you know what you're doing with these. This is a very, very important skill in blood banking. So I'm going to sign off for now, and I will talk with you all soon.